I think my mic was muted. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining Education USA Fair. And thank you for joining our session. My name is Katerina Alexandru. I'm the outreach coordinator for the Education USA in Ukraine. And today at our session, we will be speaking on how to finance your studies in the United States. And I'm very pleased to have 4 universities represented at our session. And I invite everybody to introduce themselves. We can start with Aaron.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aaron Bixler. I'm Senior Associate Director of International Enrollment at Miami University in Ohio.
Welcome, Aaron. And you can go ahead and introduce yourself. Yes, Rachel.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry.
My name is Rachel Williams, and I'm an international representative at University of Kentucky. Good to see you all.
Okay, I'm going to go now. I'm Anne from University at Albany, part of the State University of New York.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Karki. I'm the Director of the Office of International Student Services and the International Admissions Counselor here at Champlain College.
Hello, Jessica. Thank you for the introduction. And before we start with a little intro from our universities, I just want to mention 2 very important things for everybody. So first is that the financial aid is different at every university. So you need to make a really thorough research to find out everything about the financial aid at the universities that you're interested in. And the second thing is that the international students, they are not eligible for the federal financial aid. So once you check the information on the universities or colleges websites, you might see the form called FAFSA. So this is the form that you should not fill out because this is for the US citizens mostly, and this is for the federal financial aid, unless that's the only way that the university is requiring information from you for the financial aid. You might be required to fill out the CSS form, but I think we will probably speak about it a little today. So, and before we start our Q&A session, I'm sure we will have many questions today from the students and from our audience about the financial aid, financing the studies in general. I know that our universities, they prepared a little intro, and I'm just giving them the floor to speak about that very important step during the application.
Sure, thank you. And I'll jump in and go ahead and start with just a little introduction about the types of scholarships and financial aid that are available for undergraduate students at U.S. universities. When I look at it and I'm talking to students, I look at really 3 types of aid that are available for our students. There's merit scholarships, which are awarded to students, often available to international students, based on their academics. So GPA, test scores, things like that are going to determine who receives a merit scholarship at many U.S. universities and what those scholarships would look like. The second type of award that I get a lot of questions about, and I'm sure we'll have questions about today, are need-based awards. Those are not available at all U.S. universities, but they are available at some. And as the name would suggest, those are based on a student's financial need or individual financial situation. So generally, merit is not included in those, but they're determined more on a student's financial situation. And then the third one are these special scholarships that are available at many U.S. universities for undergraduate students. And those could be awarded based on things like musical talent or artistic ability or athletic ability at some schools. So there are even some special scholarships that are reserved for students who have leadership, specific leadership qualities or activities or experiences. So lots of different types of aid and scholarships out there. And we're here to hopefully walk you through how all of those work today. So I'll pass it along.
Thank you, Erin.
Hi, if no one minds, I'll go next, and I'll just give a brief introduction to some elements of scholarship applications that you might see at different universities. Now, every university is different, every scholarship program is different, but there are some common elements that you need to pay attention to in order to maximize your chances of receiving scholarships. So the first thing to pay attention to are deadlines. Make sure that you know the deadlines for all scholarships you are interested in, as many universities have earlier scholarship deadlines than admissions deadlines in general. So that's very important that you stay organized with your deadlines and you know which scholarships are due when. One element that you will see quite commonly for scholarship applications are essays. Now, in addition to the personal statement that you have to write when you apply to the university, various scholarship programs may have different essays on specific topics. A second element that might be present in scholarship applications are interviews. Now, this, of course, is not for all scholarship applications. It can be very different, but some scholarship applications do have an interview process. And as Erin mentioned, if you are applying for a scholarship for a specific talent, such as musical, there might be an audition process as well, or a portfolio that you have to submit. But in general, you do want to be aware that specific scholarship programs may have specific supplementary materials that are necessary. And that really depends on what type of scholarships are available. So the most important thing to do for all of these scholarships is to read instructions carefully, keep careful track of deadlines, and make sure you know what types of supplementary materials different scholarship programs may be asking you to submit, in addition to the application for admission. So I will stop there.
Thank you, Rachel.
I'm going to talk a little bit about how you find funding opportunities. An online scholarship search is the most basic way. Just a Google search for what you're looking for, but make sure that you're not paying scholarship services. You don't need to. Education USA in your home country will help you with scholarship searching. You don't have to just go online and do a scholarship search, but that's one way to do it. The Education USA website is a very good way to look for legitimate funding opportunities. There are different sites that are available, and again, just want to caution, when you go online, everybody is happy to sell something, right? And you just need to know that U.S. education has free services available to you. You do have to do some research. You're asking for money, so you do have to do some work on that end, but you shouldn't have to pay to get that information. That's very important. Keep that in mind. So the Education US website is one way. Of course, your specific institution. Now, you guys are meeting with some great people today, some international counselors that will be able to help and guide you through the process at their own institutions. Many of us have different types of scholarships available for undergraduate students, for graduate students, assistantships. A lot of times you can get jobs on campus. Sometimes you can enter into a university as an undergrad and then do a combination undergrad graduate program, which cuts down on the time that you need to spend, but gets you some money. So you're basically paying for your education through that assistantship. So basically getting a job, but also getting excellent experience, and it's right on campus. So that's another thing to think of. Don't think about, oh, I have to get a full scholarship in order to do an undergraduate degree at a U.S. education. That happens very rarely. And an undergraduate degree, whether you're a U.S. citizen or from another country, is an investment. You got to remember this, because if you do your undergraduate degree in a U.S. institution, going into graduate school is going to be a piece of cake for you if you've maintained a good GPA and you've kind of kept your wits about you as an undergraduate student. So it's very much an investment to mind. Now, having said that, there are scholarship options available. The online scholarship search, your home country. I'm working with several students from different countries where I didn't even know they had government scholarships, but it takes some time. And again, you have to work directly with people like me who are at the admissions part of it, because we sometimes will have to get you more specific information. The government of the country will need specific information in order to give scholarships to students coming in. So it's a little bit different of a process sometimes, but it's worth it. And we will definitely work with you if your government has, scholarships for you. So think about that. Again, Education USA can usually help you with that. International organizations like Fulbright. Most times people think of this for graduate studies, but you should look at it for undergrad as well. Rotary sometimes offers scholarships. I'm just throwing out things that you'll be seeing when you're going online. The U.S. government sometimes has scholarship opportunities available. And of course, there are going to be opportunities for international student loans. And while as admissions representatives, we want you to be able to afford your education. As an 18-year-old student coming to our campuses, we don't want you to be in debt or relying on, just not having money. That's why we ask, and we need to have that amount of money in order to get you a visa. But having said that, there are some legitimate loans that you can get. Some require a cosigner, some do not. So you can, again, work with Education USA and your counselors and advisors. They will help to guide you on what is legitimate. Oftentimes we can as well on campus. And again, don't forget about employment on campus and applying for more scholarships when you get to the university as well. So I hope this helped to provide a little bit of an overview. I'll hand it over to Jessa now.
Hi, everyone. I would like to just cover a couple things having to do, and my colleague Anne referred to this, is that studying in the U.S. is an investment. And an investment takes some time to both research, but also to space out. So in thinking about how do I budget for the United States, how do I budget for my studies in the United States? And so here's what we would normally tell international students who are thinking of coming to the US. So the first question is, okay, if you've already been, or you're starting that application process, start making an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheet. And in that Google Sheet, have all of the universities listed that you are applying to. But in addition to that, next to those universities, start making columns. Because in terms of budgeting, you have to think of tuition, you have to think of housing, you have to think of meals, you have to think of fees. That could be a technology fee, an orientation fee, a software fee, a lab fee, all kinds of different fees that come into this. You have to think of your immigration fees. So it costs money to get a US visa. It costs to apply. It costs the SEVIS fee, which is the fee that you pay in order to go to the visa, right? Visa appointment. So there are all these books, travel. Let me see what else. There's just a bunch of stuff in here that I'm thinking about. But these are all things that are going to cost you money, that you need to have money available to you. And depending upon the institution, they may ask you to see that financial wealth before they can even issue you the form known as the I-20. right? Before that even happens, right? They need to see that you have your finances collected, sorted, and ready to go. Now, how do you do this? Again, my advice to most of the international students that I work with is you create this Google sheet, and within it, you space out these categories. And then one of those columns has aid in it, the aid that the institution is going to be able to give you. And then what you do, quite simply, is you go through all of those lines and subtract any aid that is going to be given to you, and that gives you your cost for that particular institution. And it will help you to decide whether or not you can afford the institution that you are looking at, and what things that you need to give to the institution in order to show that you have funding for the I-20 process. I'm going to stop there because there's a ton of questions in our group here, and I want to be able to get to them all. So I'm going to turn myself back over to Katerina.
Thank you, everyone, for the information provided. Yes, we have many questions, and I think we start with the first one. There is a question. Hello, is it possible to cover tuition fee with financial aid? And I just want to add from me, just to make it probably, can we, first of all, just say what do we mean when we say financial aid? Is it a scholarship, or what does it mean? And what does it typically cover? If anyone can.
I think it would depend based upon the institution. I think that's what we have basically told you from the very beginning, is that in institutions here, even just on this tiny screen, vary depending upon what their institutions give in terms of aid for international students. So for example, my institution, which is Champlain College, we have merit-based scholarships only, and those range from $1,000 to $30,000 US. And our tuition fee is $63,000 per year.
Mm-hmm.
So it cuts at the top level of that merit-based aid, it cuts the cost in half for international students if they are able to get that top aid. But the top aid is granted based upon the holistic review of whatever the applicant submits in their application process. So everything, all elements have a rank that's assigned to them. So we do not, as we would say, we do not provide full scholarships to international students because we can't. However, I don't know what my other colleagues would say on this.
Yes, well, thank you very much for the information about the your institution, because there is a question and like can each university tell briefly about their university's maximum amount of financial aid for international students, please? Yes.
Sure, I can go next if that's all right.
Sure.
So at University of Kentucky, so before I start talking about my scholarships, I think there are a couple of terms that are important to clear up. So the term full ride would refer to a scholarship that covers both tuition and all living costs. I think you will find that those are very rare. They are few and far between to find a full ride scholarship that is going to cover absolutely everything. Whereas a full tuition scholarship would be a scholarship that covers tuition, so the cost of your studies, but not the cost of your living expenses. And partial scholarships mean scholarships that cover a part of your expenses. So at University of Kentucky, we have 3 separate partial scholarships for international students. We have an academic scholarship based on grades, we have a diversity scholarship, and we have an international ambassador scholarship. The most important thing to note is that students can receive more than one scholarship. And it is possible, if a student receives all 3 scholarships at the highest level, that you can add up to a full tuition scholarship at University of Kentucky. Though it is important to note that even if you receive full tuition, you would still have your living expenses, as we do not offer any scholarships that cover living expenses. So we do have a number of partial scholarships that can add up to full tuition.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Rachel. And Aaron, who?
Sure.
Yep.
So, but very similar to the University of Kentucky, Miami University, as a public school, has a number of merit-based scholarships for international students. And the largest of those can cover a student's full tuition costs, um, but generally are not able to cover a student's living expenses. So even though we are able to offer full tuition scholarships to a smaller number of students, they are still responsible for their housing, their food, books, insurance, things like that. We do have one very small 100% scholarship that's open for US and international students, but that's about 15 students a year. And only about one or two international students are awarded this per year. And that's called our Presidential Fellows Program scholarship. And there's usually about 3,000 people that apply for that each year. So very competitive. So most international students are able to get partial merit scholarships, with the maximum typically being kind of that full tuition cost as a maximum.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll give it a try. And can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear it. Just probably some connection with the mic, but it's just, we can hear you well.
Okay. Okay. For University at Albany, $17,500 per year for undergraduates. And for master's and PhD programs, you can get full funding.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I think the students who plan to apply for master's and PhD definitely should check your booth and check the programs that you have. Okay, the next set of questions are about actually GPA and the scores that the applicants should have for merit-based scholarship or full ride scholarship. Is there any suggestions or anything you can tell what GPA or SAT results and GRE results the applicant should have to be, let's say, a competitive for merit scholarships or full ride scholarships?
Sure, I can start on that, if that's okay.
Sure.
So that's a great question, because each university is going to have different requirements for its merit-based scholarship. And a lot of things have changed with admission and scholarship awarding at US universities really in the past 2 years. For example, at our institution, you used to have a minimum GPA and a qualifying SAT score to receive a merit scholarship as either a US or an international student. But about a year and a half ago, we eliminated the SAT requirement. So at Miami University, we're test optional for the SAT for admission and for scholarships. So the scholarship award, the merit scholarship award, is really going to be dependent primarily on the student's kind of GPA, not only if they receive a scholarship or not, but also the amount of that scholarship will be tied into the student's high school grades, since SAT scores are no longer mandatory.
At Champlain, I can speak also to Champlain's. Champlain's is that we are test optional, very similar to Miami in this instance, but we in terms of the merit-based scholarships, it's not just your GPA that's counted in there. It's actually the essay, the personal statement that you make to us. It's in addition to that, all of your transcripts, your letters of recommendation are also counted in that piece. And in addition to that, just have you attended virtual events? Have you reached out to us? Have you talked with us? Have you shown interest in the programs at the college? And what is your overall fit between, what is your overall fit for us as an institution? Those all are things that combine together to create the ranking that goes into the merit-based scholarship pool.
Thank you. Actually, there was a question: is the GPA one of the main points that you consider when you? So you already answered. Thank you so much. Interesting question we have here. What is more difficult, I believe, to be accepted to university or find funding?
I think the answer we keep saying over and over is it's going to be different for each university, and that is true. But I think that you will find that it's easier to get accepted and then more competitive to get scholarships. And that's true for whether it's a purely academic scholarship. So some universities will admit you, but then you have to have a higher GPA threshold in order to receive scholarships. And then there are more competitive scholarships too, where there are extra essays to write. So I would certainly say, in general, getting accepted to a university does not necessarily guarantee that you will also receive funding.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Rachel. All right. We have a question about the assistantships. Is assistantship available for undergraduate students? So this is probably something I wanted to ask, just to probably to tell the difference. What is the merit-based scholarship and the assistantship, and when the assistantship is available? Which programs, like for undergrads, grads? Mm-hmm.
Would you like me to take this
Yes,
one?
absolutely.
I can take
Thank
this
you,
one. So usually assistantships are usually thought about with graduate programs. So when you apply for graduate school, whether it's master's or PhD or both together, usually on the application, they ask you, do you want to be considered for assistantship? So you say, absolutely, yes, I do. And they usually will use your application for admission as an application for assistantship. This means that the professors, the department chairs in the major that you're applying to will review, the committee will review and decide if they want you to work with them. So basically they're deciding if they want to have you help them do research or teaching on campus. And a lot of times this happens with larger universities, research universities. So they're basically giving you money to do a job, but then you are also getting education out of it. So these can be very, very fruitful things. They can pay for for everything and can still get a stipend on the side to live and work on campus. So these are usually for students who are older, who have already gotten some experience, have already got their bachelor's degree usually. Now for undergraduates, if you're going into a bachelor's program, a lot of times universities like ours will have opportunities for you to come in and a joint bachelor's and master's program, or even all the way up to a PhD. What that means is you come into the university, you start to work with some professors on campus, say it's for computer science. They want you to work with them. They will give you an assistantship to work on campus. And honestly, the stipend or money that you will get varies greatly, really depending on the kind of work you'll be doing, how qualified you are, and how much they need you to be doing the work. A lot of medical research, like in the College of Public Health on our campus, or research in cybersecurity. Those things are really, they need students right now. So you might find some really good opportunities. So we call them assistantships, fellowships. Usually those types of things are associated with graduate degrees. However, sometimes undergraduates can get those as well.
Thank you. And a follow-up question about the assistantship. Does it require any work experience, like an assistantship position?
Yeah, it helps. Generally, you're not going to get an assistantship as an undergraduate just coming in. Assistantships or fellowships are given to students knowing that they have experience. So when you're talking about getting that kind of experience as an undergraduate student, you would have to be at university for at least a semester. Maybe you're coming in as a transfer student, so you have excellent work experience in the background, or classroom experience or research experience, but you have to prove yourself a little bit, right? You can't just come usually directly from high school. Maybe it's possible, but I don't see that happen very often. Usually assistantships fellowships, that kind of thing, yeah, you do have to have some experience in the background. Again, it's an investment. And
Mhm.
once you get that as an undergraduate student, then going to graduate school is a piece of cake. Well, sort of.
Well, thank you, Anne. I have a question. We have questions in Ukraine, a lot of questions for the transfer students. Many students who studying already in universities, they are thinking about transferring to US universities. So they ask if the financial aid or any scholarships are available for transferring students typically. What would be your answer?
I know that ours are the same, that are for new international students, new first year international students. Transfer students have access to the same aid that that our first years get. So there is no wall, if you will, between those two categories in terms of aid, in terms of merit-based aid. Just to also follow up with the assistantship versus other forms of financial aid. I assume that all of my colleagues on here, and you can just nod your head if this is a yes or a no, but I'm assuming that on most US campuses, there are student worker positions that are on campus. And that, let me be very clear that working on campus would not pay for your entire expenses at school. We tend to kind of think of these things as pocket money, if you will, that help you with living expenses and such and so forth, but they should not generally be used for to pay for an entire educational purpose. And so that's something to just put out there, that there are many labs, there are many centers, there are many different places that need international students to work on campus. And generally, during the first year, international students will do that on-campus work, because really that's all you're allowed to do by US federal regulation. And you'll have your merit-based aid or whatever aid it is that's coming in to support you with your studies and things like that. So I just wanted to kind of address that question about work and study. And my international students that come to Champlain, yes, they'll do 8 hours of work on campus, and then they'll study and do 15 to 12 to 15 credits worth of coursework load on the campus at the same time.
Thank you, Jesse. There is a question from Zurabi. Can you talk about IB program and scholarships?
I think that, well, IB programs, IB curriculums are accepted by most American universities. And I don't think that there are any specific schools that I know of that have special scholarship programs for IB curriculum. So, but I do know that, IB is considered a challenging curriculum when evaluators do look at your IB scores. And so that can certainly play a role if you are applying to any specific academic scholarships. But there are no specific scholarships for IB curriculum that I know of.
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, anybody wants to add? If not, I will move to the next question. Will applying early decision or early action will give the applicant a leg up? I would say yes. Does it actually matter if a student wants to apply for financial aid, when the student applies early or like later? Is any?
For us, it doesn't matter. Our aid is the same, whether you apply early action or early decision, or if you apply regular decision, it's the same. But I don't know how my other colleagues feel. I just wanted to put it out there that early decision, though, or early action could have binding impact upon your application. So please be aware of that particular notion. Binding meaning if you are accepted to a university that has given you early decision, most of the time you will agree to go to that institution if accepted.
Mm-hmm.
There is a sense of somewhat
Obligation.
of there's
Yeah.
obligation. Yes, that's a great word. There is an obligation to attend if you apply in that direction. So just putting that out there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jesse. Another question, is it true that to get scholarship based on sports achievements is less competitive than academic scholarship?
I can jump in on that. As Miami University does have athletic scholarships, but I would say in general, it's harder to get an athletic scholarship than it is to get an academic scholarship. All the athletic scholarships are awarded typically by coaches, and they have a very limited or capped number that they're able to give per year, and they're really looking at students from all over the world for those types of awards, and they're extremely competitive to get. Whereas a lot of schools, their academic scholarships are going to be okay. If you've met the threshold for a GPA or a test score, you're going to be receiving that without, we only have 4 of these a year or something. So in general, I would say athletic scholarships are extremely challenging to receive unless you're really a national level athlete.
Mm-hmm. And I believe the international students needs to be kind of pre-approved by the association, this sport association first, in order to be able to be eligible for the scholarship. Okay, is it a common practice to study and work at the same time in the US? Yes, everybody's saying yes.
Yes, although I want to add something to this. I just wanted to add something to this. Yes, it is common to work and study at the same time. However, please be aware that working off campus, if not authorized, is illegal and by US federal regulations. So for international students just starting in your first year, you would be on campus, specifically on campus, because that's all you're allowed to do in your first year. Once you get past your second year, then it starts to get a little more interesting. But just to be very clear on there are rules that you have to abide by in terms of work.
All right, thank you so much. Another question about working on campus doesn't working on campus interfere with studying and lower overall GPA? Well,
I would
Rachel?
say that certainly depends on each individual student. And it's really up to you to figure out how much you can handle. By federal regulations, students can work up to 20 hours per week in an on-campus job, but you don't have to accept a job where you work 20 hours per week. You can accept a job where you're working 5 hours per week or 10. So that is a personal decision that each student must make to figure out how much work you would be able to do while not affecting your studies. But I think it is a concern that many students have. So you should not necessarily go in expecting to work that maximum of 20 hours per week, because you really want to see how much you can handle, because of course your classes and your academic success does come first.
Thank you so much, Rachel. We see many questions about how many scores do I need to get in TOEFL or SAT to get a scholarship. I just want to probably tell you what I just told you. Like each university has its own requirements, please. Depending on university will have a minimum required for some scores. And I believe the university I cannot tell you how many, like, what do you need to have on TOEFL, on SAT to be eligible for this course? Am I right? Is there any number that you can tell out to everybody that yes, you need to have TOEFL, like, I don't know, 110, and then you will definitely get your scholarship?
We definitely look at each application individually, and we look at what country the student is coming from, and also what type of high school they've been in. The more challenging courses you've taken, we notice that. If you've been in an IB program, AP, A levels, we notice this. And we do, we were talking about scholarships for the IB program earlier. With the IB program, usually if students get a full IB diploma, they will come and considered a sophomore at our university because you transfer credits, and that's our university. They're like their college credits, so it's a very, very good program to be in. You can save money and save time that way. As far as specific scores that you need, we have to see. We say, at least a 3.0 GPA, but that can mean different things in different countries, right? Above an 80 percentile. It does make a difference. And if some of us have an essay portion requirement, or you write an essay as part of the common application, we will look at those. We will look at your resume. It depends. I say we will at our university. So these things are important. Your activities are very important. So, but we can't just say, absolutely, you get this score, you get this money, because it's a holistic process.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. We have many questions since we discussed jobs on campus. So now we have many questions. How much is an hourly rate for the students, like an average hourly rate? I just want to also to remind that as a student, international student, you're allowed to work 20 hours when you study and 40 hours during the breaks, like summer breaks, winter breaks. Well, is there any average amount that we can announce? Probably that the university, like in average, pays the students that much.
I think it depends upon your state, honestly, in terms of also the states have different minimum wages. There is not a federal requirement across the 50 states for a minimum wage. So that's also something to keep in mind, that minimum wage from Vermont to Ohio to New York to wherever, to Tennessee and Kentucky, those are going to change depending upon the state that you're in. So in terms of the students that I hire, because I hire the largest percentage of international students on my campus, they start with me first, with professional building and all of that stuff first, because I got to know before you go out there to work for someone else that you know exactly how to do what it is you need to do. So my range, because this is the range I have, is between, I think it's $11 an hour and say like around between $11 and $13 an hour, depending upon what you're doing. So the van drivers, because that requires a certification, that actually is at the higher end. And the ones who control programs are at the higher end because it's more technical, right? Whereas somebody who's working in an office might be more towards the lower end, which is in the 11s, right? So that's what I can say, at least from Champlain.
Thank you so much. We're almost running out of our time in our session, and I think I just want at the very end to discuss also the living cost. Whatever student decides that he wants or she wants to, spend very little on the living cost and say that, like I'm not gonna pay more than like $1,000 a month. Would it be sufficient for university or for the let's say to get the student visa? Is it important to actually meet the requirements from the university about the living cost? Can you tell more about this?
Usually we'll put a full cost that we need a student to have in order to get the I-20 form from us, and then you take that to get your visa for the visa application. If students are not going to live on campus and they can show, where they're going to be living, sometimes students know people around, like they have family around the city of Albany. and I'm going to live with my aunt. That's fine, just show that, and then we can deduct that so that the amount that you're showing, of course, we can deduct scholarship if you're getting that. So the amount that you have to show on a bank statement is less. We can do that. Does that answer your question, do you think,
Yes,
Katerina?
absolutely. Yeah, my question was about that. We usually tell our students that they the living costs stipulated by the university, not by the students. So there is an average living cost that stated by university. That actually is something that the student need to meet when he or she proves that they have funding available. So this is the important thing. And okay, the last question I'm taking: what was about average percentage of students who get on-campus jobs for each institution, if you have that number? I know the audience wants to know the numbers.
I actually don't
it's
have.
probably.
Yeah, I don't have any for Champlain, but I don't know if. Sorry, Rachel, I don't know if you have more concrete figures.
I don't have a concrete figure, but I will just say I've never met an international student who wanted an on-campus job and was not able to get one, though I do think that differs at many universities. I mean, there's such a variety of on-campus jobs, from working in the dining hall to working in an office to working in a Starbucks or the library. And even when you're later on, after your first year, doing research with a professor, for example, can also be an on-campus job. So I have actually, at University of Kentucky, never met a student who wanted on-campus work who was not able to find it. And there is an office on campus that helps students, an Office of Student Employment, that has all of the job opportunities listed.
Thank you, Rachel. So we are done with our session. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating in the session. Thank you for being with us. If our audience, if any one of you, if you have any questions, please feel free to visit the university booth, and you can basically follow up with the questions about finances and about the financial aid offered by the universities. I know somebody was a little bit late. We already I think announced the numbers that the university offered to international students as a financial aid, but you can, again, just ask them about it at their booth. And this session is recorded, so yes, you will be able to see it later on the YouTube channel. So again, thank you, everybody, and see you around at the fair.